Obviously, all eyes on the central bank and decisions to be taken by the MPC later on today. Most analysts believe we're going to see a 50 basis point hike. What do you expect?
Yes, we're going to see we may see a 50 basis point hike once again in the MPC. We believe the central bank will be talking about front-loading the effect of the depreciation of the Naira, the depreciating the Naira to about 155 with a plus or minus 3% band. So the central bank will be trying to forestall the effects of that depreciation, and analysts are predicting a 50% hike in the rates.
What sort of things are going to concern Governor Sanusi and his team? Because we've also seen inflation take up in the last month.
Yeah, that's the major thing going to concern Mr. Sanusi when he probably announces the interest rate hike. He'll be looking at the effect of inflation because, we're coming into December. It's a festive month in Nigeria. We could see a hike in food inflation, then the dollar effect as well. Then you're also talking of the effect of the wage increase. But for analysts, I think the important thing will be the effect of the yields, the fixed treasury yields. It's actually a major issue. You have an inverted yield curve right now, and you have short-term bonds doing about 14 to 15%, and which isn't good for the market because you also have to look at the sustainability effect. You also have to look at the crowding out effect. How much is government borrowing, which we are just using for recurrent expenditure in Nigeria, affecting private sector borrowing? How much are these effects affecting growth and employment? I mean, how sustainable is the growth rate when credit isn't increasing to the real sector and to the small and medium-scale enterprises?
All right, so those would be some of the variables that we look at. Let's turn our attention to what's happening on the equity side of the market. Like I said, down 116 points in the last week, and today even going below 20,000.
Yeah, unfortunately, the market has gone below the psychologically important 20,000 points. It used to be 25,000 points, actually, for the psychologically important index point, but right now, confidence is so low. There's a flight to safety by the big institutional investors like the pension funds. Government yields for fixed income instruments are doing as high as 15%, 14%. Treasury bills are quite high. Treasury bill yields are quite high. So why would anybody be looking at the market right now? And I think that's the real pain. Unfortunately, investors as well, small-scale investors, retail investors, who are still bonds from the 2008, 2009 market downturn, aren't looking back at the market. And these things may continue for now until we see some real confidence-boosting announcement or something else.
A confidence-boosting, Jimmy, for you, what would that be? Because right now, people are a little bit enthused by the so-called share buyback policy that's to be introduced. That's before we see major things like ETFs and new products coming to the market. Why would that at least create a little bit of a vibe?
Yeah, because the Nigerian market doesn't really understand the ETF, the exchange-traded fund, the Nigerian market doesn't even fully understand equities. So I really do not see the ETF serving as that confidence boosting. You are at the National Economic Summit, and you heard there was lots of talk about bringing on the big companies to list, the MTNs, the Shells, and the rest of the oil and gas, telecom sector. For me, that would be the big one that will really boost this market's confidence. But, there are still fears of liquidity and corporate governance and all that. Until all these things are sorted out, you continue to see the dead cat bounce here and there on the market.
I mean, talking about the big companies, particularly the telcos possibly coming to market, that's also become another debated issue. The governor on CNBC did tell us that he thinks it's about time that they were actually compelled to list on the market, particularly if they generate more than 50% of their revenues in an economy like Nigeria. Now, we've heard the regulators speak. Have we heard the industry players respond?
Yeah, the industry players have actually been at the background pushing for this, and the central bank governor has only just bought into this. If not, it's been an agitation that I am aware of, at least in the last 3 years. But my fear is this. I actually do not, I'm not of the opinion that we should force them to list. I think we can actually use market incentives because we seem to forget one thing. NNPC, for instance, is one of Nigeria's biggest corporations, either publicly or private, either in the public or private sphere. NNPC is there. You have the power sector companies. Even in the States, you have the water corporations and other big utility companies. And no one is talking about pushing these companies into the market. I think we need to bring, NNPC, for instance, has to start trying to raise some of the funds it's using on the capital market. On the other hand, I think there's a middle ground, because the effect of forcing some of these big corporations, nobody remembers the fact that we have very big Nigerian corporations as well, like Globalcom. We have some big cocoa producers in this country who are making so much, hundreds of millions in revenues annually, dollars, you know. So the rule is going to affect more people than just MTN and Shell and just these few people. It will affect much more. So we need to think it through. The middle ground is this. Can we have a situation whereby these companies can come to the market, raise corporate bonds, trade it, have a secondary market for bonds, trade it without, you know, forcing them to list their equities, which means you have to now begin to look at issues like having an effective corporate bond market that can trade, you know, effective secondary market for corporate bonds, effective secondary market for subnational bonds as well.